means, okay, so which actually means it doesn't react well with certain other metals. So what happened is, not knowing this, when they put in some of the outlets, the wire is going to a metal in what some of those outlets that does not like aluminum wiring. Okay, and again, we'll get scorching. Okay, it's dissimilar metals. So to counteract, first of all, the expansion of the aluminum wiring, we'll put a special paste on that counteracts the aluminum wiring contracting and loosening the set screw. So that's one thing we do. The second is when we check the outlets. When we do an inspection, only when we think it may be knob and tube wiring, or only if we think it's aluminum, are we actually going to take off some cover plates off of the outlets. Okay, and if it's not in that area, we're not taking off cover plates. So how do we know it's aluminum wiring? Well, easy enough. We take cover plate off, we see it, or quite often we will run quickly down to the basement before we start the inspection, take off the cover of the panel to see what we're dealing with aluminum wiring, then continue with the inspection. And we know we have to take off a couple of plates. And the reason we have to take off some of the plates, okay, is we want to see, first of all, to confirm some of the outlets are aluminum. So we take this off, we check a couple of outlets, you see the yellow arrow there, we see that it's copper, we see that it's aluminum and not copper. Okay, so now we know we're dealing with aluminum. Now we need to see if the outlets are rated to be used with aluminum. If they're not, we're going to have to call it out, and I'll explain what's going to happen there. So that's what we're looking for. Okay. Secondly, if we ever see aluminum wiring go into a Decora outlet, this is a Decora outlet. Now, Decora is a brand. It's like saying, give me a Coca-Cola opposed to a Pepsi. Okay, so Decoras are the nice flat outlets. They're called Decoras. So if we see aluminum wiring going to Decora, there's your X. So no go. They've all either got to be replaced or pigtailed. So now I'm going to go ahead and explain. Just one second. I just want to check another outlet here. Okay, so let me jump down here for a second. So if we see that it's not a Decora, and we see it's one of these, I call them the old-fashioned round ones, okay? That's fine, as long as, if you zoom in, it has to have this on it, Colar. The CO means it's rated for copper, the AL means aluminum, and the R means rated, so we call it Colar. Copper and aluminum rated. So if this style of outlet does not have a Colar stamp on it, it has to be replaced, okay, or pigtailed, and I'm going to explain that. So just a recap, aluminum cannot go to Decora. If it is, we're going to pigtail. Pigtailing means we're going to get a piece of copper, or you're not, the electrician's going to get a piece of copper, tie it, okay, with a special mark connector. So a piece of copper tied to the aluminum with a mark connector on it with some special paste. And then the copper wire, the little piece of copper wire that is pigtailed, can then go to the Decora outlet and you are good to go. So we can still use the Decoras. If we've got these outlets and it does not have the Colar stamp on it, again, he's going to have to either replace it with this style of outlet with the Colar stamp on it. So he's going to have to buy all new ones, or he can pigtail and use the existing ones. Again, no difference. Okay. Most people will probably go the pigtail route because they want the nicer looking flat outlets. So Decora, no go. You'd have to pigtail. This is okay as long as it has the Colar stamp on it. Otherwise, if it doesn't, it's going to get called out. Okay. So that's what we have to do. There's no ands, ifs, or buts. It must be done. Okay. Even if your insurance company does not ask you for an ESA certificate. Okay. The ESA certificate. So this is what we're going to say is, we would, if you were the client right now, we're saying, okay, You've got Decora outlets and aluminum wiring going to Decora outlets. This is not allowed. It is a safety issue. It must be changed. And here's your options. You can pigtail, we would explain it to them, or you can change them to the other outlets that are Kohler rated, okay? And you're good to go. They're going to ask for price, okay? Simple. Add up every outlet, add up every switch, add up every ceiling light. Now, obviously, if we had 20 pot lights, I can almost guarantee you those 20 pot lights were not installed in the 70s. They were installed after the fact. They'll all be copper, almost guaranteed. But let's say not a lot of renovations has been done to this townhouse. You would count the outlets. 1, 2, 3 switches, 4, 5, 6, ceiling light, 7, 8, 9, and you add everything up, times it by about $30. I can tell you right now, to change an entire townhouse, switches, light sockets, everything else, you're going to be in around $1,500–1,800 bucks. It's not a make or break. It's less than half the price of an air conditioner or furnace. Okay. Secondly, once that's been done, you need to get an electrical safety authority certificate, which means you've got to get, what I would do is I would have the guy who does the repairs is also certified to give you an ESA certificate. You then get an ESA certificate, and the insurance company will want that. The insurance company will probably give you 90 days to get that once you purchase the house. So they will give you insurance, but they want to see that done within 90 days. The reason I've got this picture here is just because it says aluminum on the wire, if you saw that, does not mean it's aluminum, okay? Well, that one, but you're going to see one that says Alcan. I thought I had a picture of this. So there's some that'll say Alcan. Just because it's Alcan does not mean it's aluminum, okay? That one down on this picture does, but you will see Alcan. Alcan was a manufacturer of aluminum wire, but they also changed to copper, but they kept the name Alcan. So if you do see Alcan, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be aluminum wire, okay? So again, they'll give you 60 to 90 days, get the ESA, another $450 for ESA. So what we at now, maybe 2,200 top end, okay? And quite often, if nothing's been done in that house, it's likely got a glass screw infused panel, likely, okay? Because that was very common in the 70s. So let's say we're suggesting you change the panel as well. So changing a panel is about 1,200 bucks. So even if you had to do everything, what you at? 3,500 bucks top end. Okay, same as an air conditioner, less than a furnace. It's not a make or break deal. But what you need to take away from this today is there's nothing wrong with aluminum wiring when you've done those checks and balances and that stuff's been done. You do not have to rewire a house. Okay, so don't panic. It's not a make or break, but it must be done. Even if you've got insurance and the insurance company never asked you if you had aluminum wiring, that's great. You've just saved yourself $300 a year, okay? But if we called it out, you must do those changes, okay? Because it is a fire hazard, okay? Plain and simple. So again, I did jump ahead a bit on the pigtailing, you know, have the panel inspected. So again, if the panel's in good shape, you're talking a little over $2,000 to do this, okay, to pigtail, to change the outlets, and to get your ESA certificate. So it's not a big cost. It just has to be explained correctly. I'd be shocked if anyone would walk away from a house because it had aluminum wiring, unless, you know, the person who did the inspection explained it wrong. And scared your client, you know, thinking, but the amount of people that think you have to rewire a house is tremendous, really is a lot. Again, I did get ahead of myself on this, and I've already explained most of this. Again, I apologize because I spent a lot of time trying to find the actual PowerPoint presentation. I couldn't find it on this computer, but luckily I had the PDF file. And this is a file sometimes I can send out. So if people are interested in it, I can always spin this out to you if you want more information. So that's it on aluminum wiring. I hope you got something out of that. If you already knew all this, maybe it was just a refresher for you, but it's always good to get refreshed on a lot of this stuff, especially when we have a lot of people coming in and buying homes from that necessarily have come from different countries, and they're not familiar with our, our building techniques here, and this is all new to them. So we really have to do a lot of hand holding on this stuff. So Kitec plumbing. The reason I like to go through this one is there's very few things, besides maybe major structural issues we may find, which is a rarity in inspections. I've got to be honest with you, it is a rarity. Major structural issues, but we do find them, obviously. But Kitec plumbing is probably one of those where if we identify it, I would say it's probably a 60-40, maybe 70-30 that somebody's going to walk away from it unless there's a major reduction or negotiation done to remediate the Kitec plumbing. This is one of the few things we cringe when we find it, because it just breaks our heart to have to tell, buyers that are really excited that they found their dream home that they've got Kitec plumbing, and it's gonna, and then once we explain what it is, yes, it can be remediated, everything can be, but it's big dollars we're looking at. So anyway, so let me go through Kitec plumbing, and again, if I explain things ahead of time, we'll just skip the next slide, because I didn't get a chance to whip through this again before our presentation, which I usually like to do. So the building years for Kitec plumbing, okay, 95 through to 2007, okay. It's a brand of plastic pipe, okay, used on hot and cold. Heating systems with boilers, regular hot and cold. The trouble is Kitec was a brand, a manufacturer and distributor all in one, which makes it a lot more difficult to identify. If we identify Kitec plumbing as Kitec specifically, that's great. But the trouble is they were also what's called an original manufacturer equipment, an OEM manufacturer, which means Joe Blow could have a major plumbing supplies and say, hey, I want it to be called Joe Blow's Plumbing. So Kitec also comes under several different names. So just because it doesn't say Kitec, it could be Kitec, which makes it very difficult for the home inspectors to, have to pull that trigger and let your clients know that you potentially have Kitec. But I've got some of the names, I think, in this presentation, if I remember correctly. So again, we still use PEX piping today, so don't get frightened of it. I mean, it bends, it's an easy run to do, there's no welding to be done, okay, easy to install, very popular today. We are still using plastic pipe today, and we've been using it where I am now in what I call the old country in England for, well, like in the 40s and 50s we were using this stuff. So it's not new to us over here, okay. So cross-linked polyethylene, okay. There's a couple of different issues that cause the corrosion, but the main one, basically, they use some zinc in the copper connections, and the zinc doesn't work very well with the copper, and hence what happens is it corrodes from the inside out. So what that means is, imagine you're trying to blow through a pipe and you're pushing pressure through here, flows through nice and easy. But as the corrosion starts closing up that hole, and it closes and closes, I've now got to put the same pressure through, smaller gap, and then the pressure builds up and splits the pipe, okay? Now, if it splits, hopefully you're home, and the amount of damage will still be substantial even in the few seconds it takes you to run down to your basement and shut that water off. But if you're not home, you're coming back to a major flood, okay? Especially if it's a pipe that splits on the top floor. Say goodbye to anything underneath, okay? So what you have to understand with Kitec is it's not a matter of if it's going to fail. It's just a matter of when it will fail. Oh, Gary, we've had Kitec. I've had Kitec in this house since 1995. That's great. That's great. It will fail. No ands, no ifs, no buts. It will fail. It needs to be replaced. So the cost on replacing obviously depends on the style of the house. Now, a lot of people say to me, Gary, how do you identify it? Well, if I see something like this, and of course, this is blown up. I mean, this is only, tiny, 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 tiny. This is nice and easy. Kitec, Kitec. You've got Kitec fittings. It's got to be replaced. All the plumbing's got to be pulled out. Okay. Now you can also see it under KTC. Is another stamp for Kitec. Another one is KT on its own. Okay. But if we see KT, Kitec, KTC, it's a no-brainer for us. If we see it written on the pipe, no-brainer for us. Where it gets more difficult is with some of the different brands that Kitec manufactured for. Gets a lot more difficult. We know what it is, but we can't be 100%. And again, I'll talk about that in here. I think I've got some extra pictures in here for you. So this is what a burst pipe would look like. So as I explained, if you look right there where that split is, that's because the pressure is building up, trying to push through the brass fitting that is a lot smaller now, and it's just going to split. And when this splits, trust me, the volume of water is tremendous. So identifying them, again, if we can see that on the brass fittings, it can also be what's called an F1807. There's a few other numbers on there. So if we see an F1807, that could potentially be Kitec. The easiest one, it used to be easy, is the original Kitec for the Kitec brand were orange. That was great. Orange pipes. Well, guess what? A manufacturer about 2 years ago is now making orange pipes for the PEX. And it's like, really? I mean, why would you do that? Surely you know the issues with Kitec. Why would you go orange? So now we're seeing new orange pipes, but they're not Kitec. A couple of years ago, they've started coming out, this manufacturer's coming out with orange pipes now. Drives us nuts, but that's what it is. You can see it black, you can see it white, you can see it gray. But typically, before this other manufacturer came out with the orange pipe, I would say to you, you see orange, it's Kitec, no ands, ifs, or buts. I can't say that today. But then again, if you were to see orange on something built, in 2019, it's not Kitec. So you don't have to concern yourself. But there is some orange pipe out there now. But typically, orange was always Kitec. So there's the orange pipe, nice and easy. So again, there's still a lot of high-rise blocks. There's still some out there that haven't changed over. There's a lot that have. But typically, open up the cupboards underneath the kitchen sink. That's the best place to identify the plastic pipe in a high-rise unit. And in the high-rise units, pretty much a rule of thumb is about $6,000 per unit is what the unit owner has to pay to replace their Kitec. The fortunate thing is, in the majority of high-rise condominium buildings, they did not use the Kitec for the main feeds. They only used it for the individual units. If it was used for the main feeds, then obviously your maintenance fees are going to go up for that repair. But most units are about 6,000. And I've known several people that have replaced in high-rise, and every single one of them I know, always the $6,000 mark. It seems to be a standard. Okay, $6,000 to do the replacement. Here's some of the other names you may want to take note of. Okay, now you've got Kitec, Plum Better, IPEX, Aqua, Warm Right, XPA, Ambio Comfort. I mean, they go on and on. Okay, now not all Plum Better have Kitec fittings. Many do, but not all. And that goes for everything here. So that's what makes it difficult for us. Now, you have to be careful, because we did an inspection and it had plumb better. And we actually stated it may or may not be, okay? But we weren't committed, and they had a plumber come in and said, yes, it's Kitec. So, and actually it was about two years ago. It was last time I was in England before the lockdown. And the client called me and I said, well, what did he do? He said, well, he just looked at it. I said, well, if I can just look at it and not guarantee you, he can't. You've got to have an invasive inspection. They called 2 of the plumbers in. So 3 plumbers now back to back all said Kitec. And I said, they can't do it from visual only on the plumb better. They finally got a plumber who actually shut the water off, cut one of the pipes to inspect inside. And he said, absolutely not. It's good to go. Okay. So there's certain things that have to be intrusive. So it's not always, you know, obviously if we see the KTC on a plumb better, but if we see the F1807, or we just know it's plumb better, you know, in the early 2000s or in that range, potentially it could be. But you have to do an intrusive inspection. They can't do it just from seeing it. So it's just one of those knee-jerk things that they're saying, because either they want the job or they don't know. I don't know. But really, you need to do an intrusive inspection if it doesn't actually have the KTC or the KT or the Kitec or the F1807. You need to do that. Okay. So there's some of the brands. So it makes it very difficult for me and my guys to identify this, but they can't do it visually. It's not possible if it doesn't actually have those stamps on it. Okay. The lawsuit actually ended January 2001, I believe. 2021. I think it was either 2000 or 2020 or 2021 January. The lawsuit for anyone going through the lawsuit, they've missed the boat if they haven't already done it by now. And they're still being settled. It takes a long time to settle these insurance claims. But I'm pretty sure it was 2020, I think, January, that it finished. But the lawsuits are still going through from people that claimed before that. Anyone who's going to claim after that, the SOL, it's not going to happen. So when you start looking at costs, you know, the costs are substantial. Again, if you want to identify it yourself and you really cannot get to one of the elbows, or you don't actually easily see the date, the brand typed right onto the pipe itself, go to the source, and the source would be the water tank, right? Because the main water's going in, that could be copper going straight to the water tank, and then the feed from the water tank is where everything's coming from. So if you can't tell from underneath the sinks, you know, you have to go a little bit further to find out, you know, if it is Kitec or not. But again, the same as we know the era for aluminum wiring, we do know that area as well for Kitec plumbing. Okay, so you know, you are talking 95 through to about 2007. Okay, so again, for high-rise buildings, you should know. I would doubt right now there's any high-rise buildings that do not know they've got Kitec, because we've been calling this out now for over 12 years. But you know, do your due diligence if you can. That's hopefully why you're doing some of these seminars, just to better get a better knowledge. We don't expect you to be experts, but on something like Kitec, you should have a very good understanding, because it's a big ticket item. So when we start talking costs, I can't tell you the cost exactly, but what you have to understand is, you know, if I've got to replace it behind a shower, hopefully it's on an inside wall and I can cut the wall out behind the shower from the closet or the master bedroom. But if it's somewhere more difficult, then now do I have to now knock the tiles off to get to that plumbing? So now I've got to retile the entire bathroom. I've got to cut holes in the ceilings. You know, what if it's a stucco ceiling? I'm not going to match the stucco. So, you know, it's harder than rewiring a house where I can just, you know, put a fish hook down and just pull it up. It's a little bit more difficult with plumbing. So you're into the tens of thousands of dollars, and then you've got all the secondary damages, patching the walls, patching the ceilings, repainting the ceilings, repainting the walls, maybe having to redo the bathroom, you know, retile the bathrooms. Big expense, big expense. So you are, you know, to me, there's very few things that I say are a deal breaker, but if I had to pick one, it would be Kitec. Because if someone's not willing to come to the table for that, your client's likely walking away. But just make sure that the listing agent then has to write down there that there's Kitec, because, you know, he does know, or she does know now, that there's Kitec in that property that they're listing. Okay, big lawsuits, and again, it needs to be disclosed if you do know about it. Yeah, you will not get insurance for water damage if you have got Kitec plumbing. They will put a rider in there. You will not be insured. And again, the costs on the damage, if you don't replace the Kitec, is going to make what the cost was to replace a Kitec look like pennies. So you do need to replace it. Remember, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it's going to fail. It will fail. Anyway, that's it for me, guys. I do apologize that I didn't have the other thing, but it didn't work too badly, I think. For those that don't know me, I mean, I hadn't amended this one. I was going to put in my little screenshots where you can put all my details in there. But if you do need me, I'm sure you can get my details from Matt. There's 3 of us full-time on staff, 3 full-time inspectors, and my wife's full-time in the business as well. She takes the bookings and does all that kind of stuff. We do work 7 days a week like yourselves. And if you've got an inspector you're using and you're happy, that's great. But if he can't accommodate you, please give us a call. We'd love to work with you. Again, 7 days a week. And we pretty much travel within an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours of Mississauga, depending on, you know, what the season is. But I appreciate your time. I don't know if Matt jumped back in or not.
Yes, thank you. So sorry for that. I was having technical difficulties.
Yeah,
so
no
you
worries.
probably heard the recording go off about, 106 or so. So I definitely missed the first 5 minutes of that, but the rest will definitely be available to everyone. Yeah, so thank you so much. That was, you got started. That's excellent. And this was I believe the final presentation in the series, right?
Great, I think so. And then you give us a call when I'm back in town. If you want to set something else up, we can do that.
Absolutely.
And then I don't know if there's any questions out there, because I don't know how to look at the text.
Nothing in text right now, but just in case, actually, hold on, one just popped in. What years was Kitec used in homes, and what years was Kitec used in condos?
The same, 95 through to 2007.
Gotcha. Okay. If anyone wants to ask them a question, feel free to unmute yourself. You can just unmute at the bottom left there and fire away, or type in your question, and we'll make sure everyone's is answered before we end it here. No, good. Okay. Well, if anyone wants to reach out with Gary, feel free to. I'm just going to stop the recording here.